The guru is within me, and it will tell me, and I will know the next step when I get to it.
There has to be something more is the most important thing she's ever going to say. And right now, I'm sure there's a lot of pain associated with that feeling. There has to be something more. But I think from that pain can be the most beautiful moment in our life where we become willing and say, okay, if not this, then what? Whenever I have asked for inner healing, it has always been answered. And so I would say, just ask for what you need next.
Today, we're going to be jumping into a super juicy conversation. I can feel it in my bones. I am chatting with Paige Williams, who is a creative coach, an award-winning filmmaker and author, and she helps people unleash their creative force so that they can rewrite what's possible for them in their lives. Now, when I read that, I was like, oh, creativity has been something that has been very top of mind for me, because where I came from in the corporate world, had you asked me 10 years ago if I was a creative person, I would have said, nope, I do strategy decks, but, and I do numbers, but I'm not really creative. I have since come to discover in the work that I do, I am actually a very creative person. And in fact, creativity is a core function of who I am that was missing for a very long time. So I'm super excited to dive into this conversation. We're going to be talking about things about like, what is creativity? How can it help us on our reinvention journey? We're going to dive into Paige's Creative Keys framework, which I'm super interested in. And and how creativity can help us get unstuck on our journey of reinvention. So Paige, welcome. I am so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. This is going to be so fun.
It is going to be so fun.
And let me just say that, like, just who you are, and that you thought at one point that you were not creative. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I know. Isn't it interesting?
Stories we tell ourselves.
Stories we tell ourselves. In fact, I have had that book, The Artist's Way, for I don't know how many years I've had it, and I pick it up every once in a while. And then this year it was like really calling to me again. And I started it, and then I still haven't like really gotten into it. I don't know what the resistance there is. So I'm excited to kind of really dig into this topic with you today, because it actually fascinates me now that I recognize that this is a core part of who I am, is creativity. Right. So, but before we get to all of that, like, what is the journey that led you to really digging into creativity and using it as you do? Because I feel like it's a very different expression of what we normally think of creativity. Right.
Yeah. Boy, we could go way back. I was born, I feel like, with colors and markers in my hand and wanting to draw and being extremely bored in the early 80s. My mother was an interior designer, and she would pull me along to fabric stores and to her clients' houses. And I was full of like color and design and what it looks like. And so that was instrumental in the foundation of who I was. And I grew up in Mississippi, which is an interesting place. It's a lot of art comes from Mississippi because there's so much pain in the culture. And so I was surrounded with jazz and with writers and with fabulous, elongated storytellers. And boy, nobody can weave a story like a Mississippian. And then when I was a senior in high school, I realized I was gay, and I fell in love with a woman. And I grew up Southern Baptist, and my parents totally flipped out. This was the mid 90s, way before Ellen. And my mother had a complete breakdown, and in fact, even like chased me down at the Waffle House with a shotgun, trying to scare the gay out of me. I went to college in Mississippi, and then when I was done with college, I decided to move across the country to Missoula, Montana, where I still live, and ended up going to film school. And my first documentary was called Mississippi Queen, and it was about my parents and I and our relationship and how we get along with others when we fundamentally disagree. Because after I left Mississippi, my parents started an ex-gay ministry, which is for people who don't want to be gay because of Jesus. And so, like, when your core identity, go ahead.
No, I'm fascinated. Keep going.
Yeah. So when your core identity is shook like that, and you're taught that, God loves you, but that can kind of mess you up, And so I went on, I made several award-winning documentary films in the social impact space. We did a film about two kids from Montana that revolutionized the foster care system. And then I hit a bottom that I would call sufficient for recovery, and did two things. I got sober. This was about 14 years ago. And then I decided to start a tech company for filmmakers like me to be able to tell their stories. And that company is called Odd Pop. And we run video contests. We have an 80,000 filmmaker network from filmmakers across the world. And we've run over 700 film festivals and contests. And I did that for 12 years. And as a female entrepreneur in Montana, I learned a lot about scaling a tech business and about what was possible potentially for me and not possible for me, just because of the data and venture capital. And we could get into all of that stuff. So I not like you, I have not worn a corporate hat, but I have worn this entrepreneurial hat because every film was like its own business. And then this was a big tech business. And then that's been about 12 years ago that I started that company. And I too found Julia Cameron and The Artist's Way, because even though Odd Pop was for storytellers, I quit telling stories and my creativity kind of died within me. And it just became about scaling a tech company, which can feel like a lot of like masculine energy and doing things that are just like by the book so that you can go get the money and make the sales to the Fortune 500 companies. And a mentor of mine said, Paige, I really think you should start reading The Artist's Way and bring creativity back into your life. So I did. And the thing that I did some of the things, I did it solo. So I'm not sure where you are in the process, Jennifer, but I took myself out on artist dates and did the whole thing. But the thing that stuck with me is the writing every day. And it became a spiritual practice almost for me. And I ended up making a couple of more little films, short films. And then I decided this last fall to write The Creative Keys and to develop a framework for transformation, both for just personal transformation, for entrepreneurs and founders, and then those for who are looking at executive leadership. Because what I found in my tech company and in making my films is that whenever I would hit a roadblock with my business, or I couldn't figure out how to get something done, I had to go within, transform, and then come back out with a solution. The solution was not outside of me, it was inside of me. And that in itself was a creative act. And so the framework follows a 12-key process of how to go about that.
Okay. So many questions here.
I know that was a lot. I'm sorry.
No. I just get excited when like you touch on things that I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. So first of all, you're in this business, you know, you're slugging it out. You're in the venture capital world, which, like you said, hyper masculine, go, do, you know, all of this. You kind of lose yourself in that, if I heard you correctly. And then you turn to creativity to find yourself again. How, like, what was that shift? Like, what did that actually do for you? What did finding your creativity do for you? And how did that change how you showed up in your business?
Yes, I would say I talk about Key Zero in the book, and the book's not out yet. I'm finishing the memoir parts of it, but the framework is there, and I'm coaching from it. But Key Zero is that like bottom, right, where we tank out. And I had laid off all of my staff. I had run out of money, and I didn't know what to do. And I was walking in the woods, and I felt completely lost. And I was like, I am willing to do anything. And what came to me was, well, then you're going to have to go inside and change. And I'd been through that process before. And so I was like, okay, what does that look like? And so the first key is willingness, just the willingness to open my eyes and say, I'm not sure what the future looks like, but I'm willing to shift and to change my perception. And then from that willingness comes key two, which is courage. And I'm like, okay, if I'm willing to do it, then I have to have the courage to do it. And I found the courage to start talking to people and saying, hey, here's what's going on with me. And it's not just I laid off people, but like, here's how it feels to my heart and to my soul. And then I feel hope because I've done the work of becoming willing, had the courage to go inside as well as to talk to others. So I feel a little hopeful. But then the key four is surrender. And that's where I have to say, okay, what are the things in key 5 is storytelling? What are the things that I am holding on to control that I think I know that are actually keeping me back? And what are the stories that I tell myself about who I am that stops my ability to grow creatively, to grow in business, to grow personally, to grow in my relationships? I'm going to pause there because we could keep going, but that's a big chunk.
Yeah, this is so good. So as you're talking about these keys, I'm kind of relating this to my own reinvention journey. So key 0 for me, the rock bottom, finding myself, within like the period of a year, divorced, unemployed, an empty nester, and bedridden with a stress related illness. Like life as I knew it ceased to exist. I'm at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom, right? Took me a while to get to the willingness to be able to accept where I was because, there was a huge part of me that was super pissed off, right? And people listening to the podcast have heard me talk about this before, right? Super pissed off that this had happened to me because everybody else's life is going along just perfectly fine, tickety boo. And here's me, in this pit. So there must be something really wrong with me, right? You know, eventually I got to the place where I'm like, if I want my life to be different, I have to show up differently in it. Like that was the kind of the realization. And then the courage to start doing that work. So that right there, whew,
That one's a big one.
It's a step in your framework, but it is a huge step to be able to look at yourself and it's very confronting because sometimes you have to accept things that you just don't like about yourself or that you wish were different or ways of showing up that are actually not working for you. Huge process. For me though, and tell me if this is possible, I think surrender came before hope.
Oh,
Like I had to surrender everything and let go of who I thought I was and what it was that I wanted before I could then see, oh, look, there's potentially a possibility here for me. Like I now have this opportunity to recreate life on my terms, right? I can do what's important to me. But I had to fully surrender before I got to hope.
That's such a good, interesting perspective. I love it. I think the reason I put hope before surrender is I'm not sure that I'm willing to do the work of surrendering unless I think there's going to be a good outcome, which feels like hope. Like I might not be willing to do the work if I don't feel like this is going to work for me.
Right.
But I hear you what you're saying. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think everybody's situation might be different because for me, like there just was no other choice, right? Like they're like I can't go back and I'm stuck here. So I had to be like, okay, you got to face this. You got to face this head on, right? And I got to surrender. Like a huge part of me, like having come from a corporate career where you are told you can control all the variables, you manipulate everything into the exactly place. Like I was a control freak. I had to let go of control and fully surrender and be like, okay, there's got to be something. And maybe this is it. That tiny little seed was like, there has to be something on the other side of this. So maybe that was in fact the hope. That teeny tiny weeny little seed was the hope that led me to be like, okay, you just got to let go here, girl.
Okay. So maybe we should continue on because this might make sense.
Okay. Okay.
Because key 4 is surrender. Key 5 is storytelling, like looking at the old narrative, see what our limiting beliefs are, rewrite old, outdated narratives about ourselves and about others, about our divorces, about our kids, about our mom and dad, whomever, right? And then key 6 is trust and release. So it's like, oh, here's all this surrender here. Okay. Now I've looked at the stories I'm telling and now I am going to practice the art of letting all of that go and create space. Because when we create space in our head and create space in our narratives, it gets pretty quiet when we let go. And in that quietness leads to key 7, which is radical self-honesty. Okay,
Mm.
now that I've done this trust and release and let go of these old narratives, can I get really honest with myself about who I am now?
Mm. Okay, that tracks. That tracks.
Okay. Okay. But Jennifer, I'm going to go to bed thinking about, should hope and surrender switch places?
Well, I feel like I said, I feel like it might be different for other people, but you are very, very right when you say like that hope, like the hope was like this tiny little, like I said, a teeny tiny little seed
It
that I
allowed you
was
to
like,
move.
well, there has to be something else. Like I
Right.
can't, this can't just be the end. Like this isn't just like I'm 50 years old and you're just about to drop me off into the abyss.
Right.
Like,
Otherwise, we're done. We're done here.
right.
So I've got to feel something to keep moving.
And I think part of what gave me that hope was, part of my reinvention journey was a very deep spiritual journey, right? So I had started reading A Course in Miracles and doing things like that. So there's this little idea, even though I didn't fully buy into it at that point, I was playing with this idea that like things are happening for me, right? Like that there is a purpose to everything. And so that kind of gave me, I think, that teeny tiny little seed of a hope that was like, okay, if you just like let go and see where this goes, like you have nothing left anyway. You have nothing to lose at this point, right? It can't get
Right.
worse. And maybe it could
Right.
have, right? But
Right.
that was kind of my frame of mind. But what I think is very, very interesting is so question before I say this, how do you define the difference between surrender and trust and release?
Mm. Surrender is like, okay, so audio, they're not going to be able to see this, but so I'll explain it. Surrender to me feels like, okay, my hands are up. I give,
Yeah, waving the white
you
flag.
know, it's like, okay, I'm waving the red flag. And then trust and release, it's almost like I bring my hands in and under, and they're now open, and I'm
Mm,
ready. I am now
okay.
ready. Like
Oh,
it's almost like dropping and
right.
then open.
Right. Okay. Okay. That's cool. That makes sense. Um, so what does all of this have to do with creativity? Because
Mm.
people listening, like, okay, creativity, that's art, that's making things, that's like what do these seven keys, which really are about what's happening inside of us, right? And our
Mhm.
progression, almost like the was it seven steps of grief or six steps of grief or
Yeah.
whatever it is, like this process
Mhm.
that we're going through internally. What does that have to do with creativity?
That's so good. I'm going to quick run through the rest of the keys to answer that
Yes,
question, if that's
let's do it.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So after we get radically self-honest, we go into shedding and we let go of what no longer serves us.
Yeah.
So letting go of those old beliefs, letting go of those old habits, letting go of those old identities, maybe relationships that no longer work for us even.
Right.
And then because we've shed, we've got this new skin on, and we have to trust our intuition and our inner knowing that we shed what no longer served us and that we can now receive whatever comes to us, which is a
Mm,
huge creative act.
yeah.
And then we're going to take some aligned action, because what happens is when we get clear and we listen to our gut and our intuition, action comes. And that's a creative act. And then usually where trusting intuition, shedding old beliefs, trusting intuition, and taking action draws us to is love and service, which is why I believe we're all here. And that's a creative
Mm,
act. And then what happens is key 12, where we awaken to the light of creative wisdom. So these 12 keys to me are all a creative act, because creativity is about connection. And connection is the opposite of fear. It is the opposite of anxiety. If we can get connected to ourselves and connected to others, and for me, connected to something greater than myself, a loving power who loves me, then we can, that is a creative act in and of itself, of going through the process of looking at all of these keys. And in my book and in my coaching, I have rituals, I have ceremony, I have questions to journal about, to reflections on that. And that is a creative act. It's putting pen to paper. It's talking with a trusted mentor in your life or a trusted person in your life. And then the taking action is a creative act. Love and service is a creative act. And all of that to me is, wow, it's like a whole loop of keys, and you can pick up the
Mm.
keys at any place or wherever you are. And to
Right.
me, that is living a creative life. And once we do that, our whole world opens for that aligned action. And usually that action is based in creativity, no matter what you do.
Right. So again, so many questions are coming to my brain. So when you're talking about creativity, you're talking about creativity in the greatest sense of the word. So not creation as in I'm creating art per se, although life is art, right? But you're saying it in the biggest sense of the word, co-creation of our lives, right? Like
That's
we're in the process of creating how we want to live,
yes.
which most people don't view as creativity because creativity has a very narrow context within the culture that we live in.
That's such a good point. I mean, it's almost like we have a limiting belief or a limiting knowledge of what creativity actually is, and that it
Mm,
has to be art.
yeah.
But I think that that's what makes us unique is our creativity. And we're all creatives. We're all creative beings making things any time of the day, whether we're cooking, cleaning, like anything we're doing, creating a place, a space where we live. It all requires creative actions because it's all requiring our five senses to put something together.
Mm,
And I think the most creative people are not necessarily like whomever painted this beautiful piece behind me or behind you, but it's those who are creating moments of connection for our loved ones and for our community.
mm,
And that is a creative act. And if we believe that, and if we start realizing that everything I do fulfills a creative person in my life, then I feel connected. And that leads to the key 12 of more awakening and more connection to ourselves and to each other.
and to others. Wow. So when you talk about the creative keys being able to help you move past resistance. So let's say there's somebody listening in this audience who's like, there's definitely something more for me. I'm feeling called into something, but I just can't seem to take a step forward, or I'm procrastinating, or I like how would they approach the creative keys?
Yeah, that is exactly what the creative keys are for. It's to say, okay, I know that something has to change, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. And so through the framework, it's listing like just for your users, if they never go to my website or read the book, like just list like 10 things that aren't working, and then list 10 dreams you have or 10 ideas you have, and don't worry about anyone reading it. Like I think this is where the artist way is so beautiful. You can
Mm,
write anything, and you don't believe you know that no one's ever going to read what you write. It is not for an audience. It is for yourself, and it is for your soul. And so like when I knew that I was supposed to write the creative keys, I said, but I'm not an author. I'm not a writer.
mm, mm,
And so I had to put that to the side and say, yeah, but what could my higher self say? What could Paige in 6 months say about this if I do write the book? Can I put aside this limiting belief to answer my call for aligned action and surrender this idea and this old story that I'm not a writer and just write it
mm.
anyway? Like, don't worry about the results. Just write it anyway. Just write one page today, just for
Right.
today.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
taking these micro actions can create macro effects.
100%. I mean, I say that all the time is, take the tiniest step that you can
Yeah.
possibly think of in the direction that you want to go. Because sometimes big leaps are just not available to us for whatever reason. But I like it's almost like a little brain hack. It's like if you take a giant leap, your brain goes, "Ah, what are you doing? What are you doing?" and fires all of the, the stories about how you're going to fail. But if you just take a tiny step, it's like your brain goes, "It's okay. Everybody stand down. She just took a tiny step." Right? Like
Right, right. And it's just
it's
ourselves.
okay.
It's just as
Yeah.
like we're
Yeah.
like practicing our creativity by little steps. It's almost like beginning to lift weights. We start
Right.
small and we
Yeah.
gain in traction. Another thing is it's important to know how you receive information and how you change through information. So like for me, I can write all day, but another thing I suggest that people do, and this might be, some of your audience may resonate with this more, is like get big white paper and just post stickies, right? Just like, here's what I might do, or here's what this might be telling me, and put them all over the place, just getting it up. And then another thing that we do is in human design, I'm a projector. So I'm very much supposed to use my voice. And for years, I didn't use my voice. I ended up with Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid issue, which is in the throat. My primary chakra is my throat chakra. And so, but I literally physically got sick, as you mentioned, being in the bed, from not using my voice. So when I speak something, I know it. And so I get a friend with me and I do the sticky note, big paper thing and talk through it. I make sure that friend knows that half of it's going away and I'm never going to do anything about what I'm saying, but just being able to say to that person this, and then they ask me questions back. They only get to ask questions. They don't give advice. Sometimes I just voice record myself and then I play that back to myself. Right. So just some different options of like those micro steps we can take.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting because I have, it in the work that I do, like I have women who come into the community and they're saying things like, well, I'm feeling really called to let's say art or whatever it is, but I'm not an artist, I'm an accountant, right? Like, because, that was their career. That was the box that they put themselves in, right? Like that's how they saw themselves, right? So for me, I was corporate executive, right? Like that was the box. And I couldn't see anything for myself outside the box. Right. So when the box went away and now I'm without a box, what do I do? Right. I'm now trying to figure out what box am I going to squeeze myself into? But I was looking at that like from the external world rather than like what was I feeling called to? And I think it takes courage to answer your call, like that thing that's inside of you. Right. And maybe it doesn't need to become, your next full-time career, but like maybe that calling is just leading you to another step, right? That you need to take that will help you figure out what that next thing is.
Absolutely. It's like we have to surrender to the old story that I'm an accountant and not an artist. And we don't have to be the best artist, and our art doesn't have to be good, but I believe all of us have a creative calling inside of us that wants to play. Think about when we were kids, we were playing, which is creation. And adults that play over 50 live longer and they have more fun. And so about 2 years ago now, my girlfriend and I ran a retreat called Camp. And we invited all these executive women to come to Montana and ride horses and do ceramics and take yoga and do some forest bathing. And we just played. We just played all day. There was no training. There were no, of course, talks happened. And most of it was about like perimenopause and menopause and health. And what are you doing to solve this problem? And those were just conversations as they rode horses, as they rode bikes, as they did ceramics, as they painted. No one kept their ceramics or their paintings, but the fulfillment that they received from allowing themselves to surrender and do something they had not done that their soul was calling for brought such relief that they went back into their businesses with so much clarity and joy.
So how have the creative keys really shifted your life? Like now that you have, written these, you're embodying them, you're living them, like how has your life changed? What can people expect from, the creative keys?
Yeah. So for me, like I am learning the creative keys as I speak out the creative keys deeper and deeper. And what I did was my video platform, Odd Pop, is in a transition phase. And so I'm answering this call that I felt very deeply to bring the creative keys forward to the collective. And in that call that I was terrified to do, it took me 3 years to build the courage to do it and to create the container and the form and what it was going to look like. And I had some limiting beliefs about what I could do. As a Southern Baptist child in Mississippi, I had a limiting belief that women could not be spiritual leaders. And I believe the creative keys is a spiritual work, even though we're talking about leadership and personal transformation and business. depending on, which side of the keys we're looking at. And so even for me, I use the creative keys. That's actually how I developed them, because I knew I was being called to help rise our consciousness around creativity and personal transformation and alignment and awakening, but I didn't know how. And so for 3 years, I went back and forth with myself about what does this look like, and having to shed and shed and shed. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, the container is called the creative keys, and here's what it is. And it just flowed out. It just flowed out. But one thing I know, running businesses, making films, doing the creative keys, is my timing is not divine timing. And those two things look very different. And so for me, using the creative keys allowed me to open me up to doing my life's next chapter. So for your audience who is looking at what's next, the keys can help them get to that place of what is next for me, and what does it look like, and what does that container look like. And that journey is really just an inward journey, and it gives some steps and keys about how to get there. And then once they go through the creative keys and listen more about it and do some of the work around it, they'll be able to reflect back and say, and now I am willing to do this work. I am willing to take this aligned action. I'm willing to do my art if I'm an accountant, because it's really a work of love and service to myself and to others.
Interesting. So when somebody's coming to the keys, like if there's one, for example, like, does it have to be done linearly, or can you kind of like step in at trust and release? Because that just feels
totally.
So it's a circle as opposed to a line, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like, we all have the dark souls of the night that lead to change, but we're not always in that, thank God, right? We're not always like in despair and something has to change in my life. And so, yes, I do think that the keys are a circle, and you can step in at any point. And I actually have a quiz that people can take to tell them which key they need the most right now in their life. And so that will help them unlock that key when they take that quiz.
Interesting. And which has been the most important key for you?
Oh,
do you think?
Willingness. I think it all starts with being willing, because, I can be going down the road and I think I'm going one direction, and we're going and we have a plan and we've prepared for this road. And then all of a sudden the road takes a sharp turn, or I get off the tracks and things aren't moving anymore. And I can say I've gone like 3 hours down the wrong road, and I can just be like, but those 3 hours, and I'm not willing to turn around and make course correction. And when I become willing, my life shifts and things get better. But it isn't until that willingness that things change. And unfortunately, that usually comes through a little bit or a lot of pain.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was just thinking that, because, when I think about my own situation, like that little niggling voice, that we all have, like, I had kind of reached the top of my career. Like is the thing that I had worked for. And I would find myself sitting in meetings and be like half listening and thinking, is this it? Is this all there is? Like, is this really what I wanted? And then I would tell that little voice to shut up and sit down, because I got work to do, because I didn't know what to do with it. Right. Like if it wasn't this, like I'd spent my whole life building this. If it wasn't this, like, what am I going to do? Throw it all away? Hell no, I'm not doing that. Right. And then it wasn't until, literally my whole life was ripped out from underneath me, where I was like, okay, well, now I have no option. So I wouldn't call it willingness. I was call it like forced into.
Right.
Right. But had I been willing earlier, so this is where I was going with this. Had I been willing, maybe I could have saved myself a lot of pain. Had I just got curious about that voice, as opposed to trying to ignore it altogether. And I think maybe, before willingness comes curiosity, just to be like, where's that coming from? Like, what part of me is actually saying that?
Right. Or like even knowing to listen to that voice for years.
Right.
I didn't even know about that voice, even though it was there. I didn't know anything. Like I didn't know it was there. I didn't know to listen. It's so interesting how we, especially at our age, right? Like we become more ourselves, and it's like, be yourself, but be all of yourself. Right. But until I listen to that voice, I don't even know where to start.
Mm,
I think that's the gift of aging and
yeah.
wisdom, is
Yeah.
listening to myself more and more and more and more and realizing, oh, I am the compass.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about that a lot because as women, especially, we have become so disconnected from ourselves because we're so busy doing, taking care of everybody and everything, just like we're at the bottom of our to-do list, like the very, very bottom of our to-do lists. And, we often never even get there. And so, we get to this place where it's like, okay, what's next? And because we're so disconnected, we don't have the answer to that question. Right. And so a lot of what we need to be doing in this chapter of our lives is turning our focus from everything that's happening outside of us, right? And the external validation, is my body a certain way? Am I a good wife, mother, daughter, employee, all of those kind of things? And to turn it into what's really important to us, like what matters.
I love that you talked about curiosity. It's like curiosity, then creativity, and then ultimately you get connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, curiosity, creativity, and connection. Oh, I like those.
Creativity
I like
and
those three
connection.
C's.
You too.
Write those down.
I'm writing it down.
Curiosity. Oh yeah, interesting. Yeah, because I think, as we are like, and I always call this like the chapter of unlearning and relearning, right? So we're unlearning like all of this conditioning that's been given to us between our culture, our families, all of these things, right? And learning a new way of showing up, which is where I feel like the creative keys is like the guide to a different way to show up in your life, right? Because if you
100%.
show up differently, your life has to look different. Like
That's
you're the
right.
constant.
Right. Right. It's so interesting that to be a better wife, mother, partner, girlfriend, daughter, I have to go in. It's
Yeah.
not like the serving others comes much later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Much
It's not
later.
about doing anything. It's about
No.
who are we being.
Yeah, and like releasing control over things. I know we haven't talked about that too much. You talked about it in your,
Yeah.
like, I realized I was controlling and hanging on tight to things and ideas, right? Me too. Like I have a 17-year-old right now who's struggling with school. He's brilliant, but he's just struggling getting to school. And I have had to let go of trying to control him and just love him where he is, as he
Hmm.
is, and just watch and like give him the ability to fail. But I can tell you that allowing my son to fail was harder than getting sober 14 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because what will people say about me as a mother?
Right.
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 As a
Right.
parent. Yeah. Oh yeah,
Right.
I remember going through that with my daughter as well too, where she was like dealing with anxiety and depression, and trying to figure
Yep.
out what her life was, and I would say to her, "But you have to get out of bed every day. Like you have to get out of bed," and like the
Right.
tension that was building between us, and then it wasn't until one day I was just like, you know what, you need do whatever you need to do. I'm here when you're ready to ask me for help, and that literally overnight shifted our relationship like in a huge way where I stopped pressuring her. And the pressure wasn't so much for her as it was for myself.
That's right. Right. Me too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, thinking about those clenched hands and letting go and then turning them over to receive whatever comes as a result of letting
Hmm.
go is a creative act in and of itself
Yeah.
that ultimately leads to being more connected to our kids or to our
Yeah.
work, the people we work with, like whomever, whatever, wherever that rub is in our life.
Yeah. Which I mean really boils down to trust. So like one of the keys, I think it's key 6, you talk about trust and
Hmm.
release, right? Like so
Hmm.
we can release when we trust ourselves to be able to manage whatever comes up or to navigate through whatever comes up, because often we're holding so tightly and wanting to control everything because we don't trust ourselves to deal with the outcome.
Absolutely. And I have to do that as a daily practice sometimes, especially in relation to this issue with my 17-year-old, because it's so difficult. And I take it back and I clench my hands again and I want to control and I want to be like, did you do this? Did you do? I'm like, nope. You made a commitment to yourself and to him that you weren't going to parent in that way. And I have to trust and release once again.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's
mean
a,
it's a
it's courageous.
Like life is a constant, trusting and releasing of, I mean, just about everything every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally wild. And I can see even, well, I mean, pretty much every one of these things, like the willingness, the courage, the hope, the surrender. Like you could go through this list of keys literally every single solitary day in various different aspects and various different parts of your lives.
That's right. And I think that one thing that's been helpful for me is like, which key am I at today? Because
Mm,
whenever like I'm disturbed, I know that there's something wrong with me and I have to go inside to figure out what that is. It doesn't matter what she's doing or what he's doing. There's something in me that's being rubbed in the wrong way. And there's some story I'm telling myself that needs to shift in order for my perception to shift, in order for me to not really suffer, and then to trust and
mm,
release and let go over and over and over.
yeah. Yeah. You have a quote on your site that says, every person or organization has the power to change their world by listening to their inner guidance.
Hmm.
And the keys really is the path or the guide to that inner guidance.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's when I was thinking about when I was preparing for this interview and I was thinking about creativity, and I was very much thinking about it in the context of creation, as in I'm building a business, or creation as in what I bring to my social media presence, or creation as I bring to my brand, like all of those types of things. But I hadn't tied it necessarily to co-creation in the much greater sense of the word, which I think is actually the most important definition of creativity, as we were talking about before. But it definitely, like, and I've seen you say, everybody is creative. Like there is like not a person on this planet who isn't creative. And when you think about it in the broader context, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I can see that now.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And I believe it's a creative work to do the inner work to be able to create change outside of us. So right
Mm,
now, in the US it's nuts, right? And everyone
yeah.
is in a lot of fear. It's like, what can I do? What can I do? There's so little I can control. Well, what is within our control is our own creativity and our own transformation and our own work. And whether that's personal transformation or it's leadership transformation, it's business transformation, it's growing a business, it's scaling a company, it's creating a new revenue stream, that has to start from within. We can create revenue models, we can create new social media campaigns, but all of that is a creative work that starts with it from within in an authentic, in order for them to be successful, an authentic sense to say, if I'm the leader, why am I leading? What am I leading? Am I passionate about it? If I'm not passionate about this work and creating this new social media campaign or this new revenue stream, then I need to go back inside and figure out, why are we doing this in the first place? Whether I'm the
Mm,
CEO, the CMO, a solopreneur, it doesn't matter, right? But why am I in this? Why are we doing this? And getting back to the why and how are we actually going to do that? All of that is big creative moves. It's big creative action. And I found myself unable to take those creative moves and do that creative action until I changed within. And then I could come out to my team and say, okay, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. And we're going to trust the process of doing it. So,
yeah. That's really interesting because most of the time, and I know this to be true for me in building my own business, that we do the things that we think we are supposed to do, or we should do, or somebody told us that we should do, or this is just the way that it's done, right? Like, so I want to build my brand. Okay, well, here is the guru of the times 10-step strategy to, building your brand, right?
right.
And then you find yourself, okay, I'm going to follow this guy's because obviously he knows what he's talking about. So I follow this thing. And I found this to be true for me. Like I'm in the process of following this guru's steps to build your brand. And I'm like, I'm doing it, but I'm not in it. right? And then it's not working. And I have finally reached the point where I'm like, I have to trust myself. Like, I know, like, if I am not passionate about it, if I am not excited about it, then it's not going to work. So it's no guru can guide me to where I need to go, right? Like, the guru is within me and it will tell me, and I will know the next step when I get to it.
Oh my God. Brilliant. The guru is within me.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Because
That's
I
right.
mean, I personally, I can't tell you like how many times I've decided to follow some other system, strategy, whatever, that just has not worked for me. Because, and like, to speak in human designs, I'm a manifesting generator, right? Like,
Oh,
I with emotional authority, okay, I need
yeah.
to feel passionate about what I'm doing in order to be able to do it. And that
Oh,
was
you're
like,
such a creator.
right. Um, and it's interesting because, when I first started exploring this whole idea that I was a creative person, I started looking back on my corporate career. And what I realized was the happiest times of my corporate career was when I was building something. And I'm like, I don't
Mm.
know why I didn't see that before. Like a new strategy, a new product, a new marketing program, like whatever it was, I was building something out of nothing. And it was only when I started looking back at it that I was like, oh, yeah, shit, you really are creative, right?
That's right. That's right.
But I was
Even
looking at it as
today,
numbers and strategy, right?
yeah. Like even today, I our video contest software is millions of lines of code. It is hard to change. It was expensive to build. And I did something today that when I did it, I just built like, okay, well, this is one thing I love to do is like a micro creation act in my business. I'll just build a deck or I'll just rewrite a deck or I'll just build a new website on Squarespace on a free trial to say, this is what we are today. This is evolved from 12 years ago or even 5 years ago. And I did that today for Odd Pop. And I was like, oh, I should have done this 5 years ago.
Mm,
Like
right.
when I finally let go and just because sometimes I don't hear that inner voice or I just don't trust it of like, who am I today? Who is my business today? What is this revenue stream today? And what should it be? Because there's something misaligned right here. And until I
Yeah.
look at that misalignment, it's just going to keep being messy.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about alignment? Because I've seen you reference that a bit. Like, how are you defining alignment?
I think of it as flow. Or I
Mm,
think of it when you said that seed of like something's not right here. That's misalignment. When I feel in my gut something's not right, that's misalignment. When I can't get out of bed, that's misalignment. I mean, there's things that show up in my life that say you are not acting from alignment. There's things that show up in my business that say you are not acting from alignment. And things are clunky or they're hard or they're difficult, right? And then
right.
alignment is when everything comes together and all of a sudden there's a flow path and it's more at ease. And I have the ability to handle the hard things. Like this is life. We're guaranteed that it's not going to be easy, and that's okay. But if I'm living in alignment to my highest values, then I can deal with the hard things without getting too disturbed about it. And then if I do get disturbed, I have to go back in and say, why am I disturbed? And shift things, shift that seed in order to bring me back into alignment or my business back into alignment. And that takes a lot of trust.
Yeah. Here's a perfect example of this, of the conversation I was actually just having with a client, who is in the real estate business. And she's like, I don't like being in the real estate business. Like, I need to find my purpose. And then we started talking about her purpose and unpacking her purpose. And she was talking about, the part of her business that she loves is when she sees her client move into this new house, into this bigger space, into this, reorganizing their furniture, and they're all like lit up and excited about it. And I said to her, I'm like, your purpose is not like doing real estate deals. Your purpose is in shift, like is in the energetic shift that you're creating for these people who are up leveling into these homes that suit their lives, or maybe they're downsizing into a home that suits their lives, but they feel good in that space. And
Yeah.
she was like, huh, I had never
Oh,
thought about it that way. Right. And then, and I said to her, like, your purpose, like, and she's so talented, like so gifted in terms of like her ability to intuitive read what people need in a space and find them that house, and then the features of that house and helping them decorate it and all of that kind of stuff, right? And I said, yeah, like you're helping people like change their own internal energetic state. Your tool is real estate, but your purpose is not real estate, if you know what I mean, right? But again, it's perspective, like you were saying, right? It's all in how we're looking at it and trusting, like, what is that thing that brings you joy? She's like, that's what I get really excited about my job, is seeing people move into their houses. But she was discounting that because, well, you know, so like trusting that those like nuggets of excitement, like wherever they're calling you to go, whether they make sense or they don't make sense, you have to trust. You have to trust that joy, right? Those things that make you happy, because that's the path, as far as I'm concerned.
100%. And that reminds me of key 11 of love and service. Like, think of the love
Mm,
that she's spreading for those homeowners and the service she's
right.
providing that helps them connect.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Hmm.
It's fascinating because, like you said, I mean, we are all creative. We all, have a purpose on this planet, but we just have not been taught to tune in and really listen to that.
Hmm. And I would just add one thing in terms of like creativity, as we usually define creativity of like an artistic action, whether it's writing or making music or painting. I think sometimes if we can do that, no matter how small, and not do it from a place of self judgment, it will open our mind to what's next. So I
Mm,
believe that, like, putting pen to paper, doing
mm,
something different, drawing in color, it helps us open our mind so that we are more open minded and willing to go to the next key to take us where we need to go, to trusting our intuition, listening, surrendering, shedding, letting go, and then hearing our inner wisdom to become the guru. What did you say so beautifully?
the guru within,
The
or
guru
whatever. I
within.
can't remember
The
what I
guru
was.
within. That's right.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm thinking that, it takes like creativity, as you've defined it with the creative keys here, takes a level of vulnerability, which is also
Mm,
pretty scary for most of us.
totally. I feel like vulnerability is easier for me to swallow if I say there's no audience, it's just for me. And somehow,
Mm,
like, that lets me release my breath and do a creative act.
because the what will people think, or,
Yeah, I just have to let that go
yeah.
and do it for myself. And then if I just share it with one person, it becomes a little stronger. And share it with another person, it becomes a little stronger. And it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. But I have to just start with myself without an audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's true as well. I think we need to like honor these little nuggets or these seeds, but we also need to give them space before we thrust them out into into the big wide world, right? So it's like, they're just starting to sprout. Like, so we need to water them a little bit, let them get a little bit stronger. It's like, learning to walk, right? Like, I'm not going to shove you onto the sidewalk before I really know that you know how to walk. So it's like playing with these ideas a little bit and letting them grow legs and letting them germinate inside you before you release them out into the world. I think it's so important, because we need to, I mean, what we normally do is we have the seed of an idea or something that, this spark of intuition, and, 0.5 of a second later, we dump 15 reasons why it's not going to work on top of it, and we like crush the thing.
Right.
Right. But if we can do it just for ourselves and be like, what if, and just play with it, right? And just
Yeah.
like stop that flow of 15 reasons just for a little bit, to give this thing a little bit of space to grow, right?
Right.
It becomes more real.
That's right. And then we can decide, you know,
Yeah.
but give it 15 reasons why, or 15 reasons how, or 15 micro actions to making it become. And then you can decide, like, where's the pain in that? And I'll say, like, even for myself, I was so scared to write a book, call myself a coach, be a leader in this space. I was so scared. It felt so vulnerable because I had so
Mm,
many limiting beliefs.
mm,
And it was only through taking small actions and just doing it kind of with myself or with one or two trusted people over a given period of time that it became, oh, I can't not do this. Like, this is my path. And when I had my first coaching session using the Creative Keys framework, it was the most fulfilled I've ever felt professionally.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And that's what people are searching for. And when we feel that call, like there has to be something else. There is something else, right? Like it's a part of you calling to you going, okay, there's another side here. And for me, like the universe had to pick me up and like basically kick me off my path so I couldn't go back to it in order to get me to listen. And it doesn't need to be that hard. If you can, step into willingness to say, I'm just going to try. I'm just going to experiment. I'm just going to get curious and see where this takes me. That's all this required. And then, the rest of the keys, I feel like they just kind of unfold one after the other that lead you down this path to that sense of fulfillment that you just talked about.
100%. Beautifully said.
Oh, I love that. I love that. This has been such a great conversation. What would you say to the listener right now who's standing with her toes on the edge and she's like, there's got to be something more. How do I begin to find this? Like, where do I go from here? What would you say to her?
That there has to be something more is the most important thing she's ever going to say. And right now, I'm sure there's a lot of pain associated with that feeling of there has to be something more. But I think from that pain can be the most beautiful moment in our life where we become willing to get curious and say, okay, if not this, then what? And that is a beautiful place to be in. It's life-changing. Even if the circumstances around us don't change necessarily too much, we change. And so it can be the most beautiful moment that we begin to create a new life for ourselves where we feel fulfillment and we feel joy. We feel awakened. We feel like we've ascended to the next level of our growth and we've become all of ourselves. So I say hallelujah, because thank God she's there. Thank God she's there, because without that, we don't change and things don't get different.
Right. That's where we're being called into the change. I love that.
And I'll say one more thing.
Yeah.
One more thing. Whenever I have asked for inner healing, it has always been answered. And so I would say, just ask for what you need next.
Yeah, I say that all the time, is that we don't ask often enough and we don't ask for enough, right? Like we need to be asking all the time and asking for bigger, better. Like, it's not like, well, I just want this one little thing. You can have everything. You can have it all. You just need to ask for
it. Right. Whenever I've asked for inner healing, someone comes along my path to show me the next way.
Next step. Oh, yeah. I love that so much. The other thing I would say is you have your quiz about where to start on the creative keys.
Yes.
I mean, if you're standing on the edge right now, and we'll make sure that this gets in the show notes, you have this free quiz that somebody can do that can give you, okay, this is the place that you start within this creative keys framework that can help you move forward.
Yeah. If you go to paigewilliams.co, there's a virtual assistant in the corner and she'll give you the quiz if you ask her. And you can also get to the quiz in some other places, and it's on my social media and all that. So yeah, you can find it and it'll tell you what you're struggling, which key you need to look at the most right now in your life.
Excellent. And when is your book coming out?
We'll see. I think I'm going to self-publish it. I've been getting curious about what does that look like and asking questions of people who've done it before me. But I'm feeling that it just needs to get out in the world, and I'm listening to that inner knowing. And today I was like, yep, I think it's a self-publishing deal with this book. Good. So I'm going to get curious about that and figure out how to get it done. So it's almost ready.
Amazing. Well, yeah. I can't wait to read it. This has been like a fascinating conversation. Like I said, for me, this chat about creativity was very different than I had anticipated it. I think for most people listening, they're going to be like, hadn't thought about creativity that way, which is what I aim to do on this podcast, is just to make us think a little bit differently about ourselves and our lives, that maybe it can open the door to a possibility that we hadn't considered before. So thank you for sharing your life's work with us with the Creative Keys. And to those of you listening, if you like what you heard today, first of all, go visit Paige, take the Creative Keys quiz, jump in with whatever comes up, and see where it takes you. So if you like what you heard today, the other thing that you could do is to pass this on to a friend or a colleague or a relative that you think might get something out of it. So until next time.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It was a great pleasure meeting you.
It was such a great conversation. Thanks for listening to the Old Chicks No Shit podcast. If you like what you heard, the greatest compliment you could give us would be to comment below and subscribe. Or better yet, you could share this episode with a friend, a relative, or somebody you think could get something out of it. And remember, midlife is not the beginning of the end. It's simply the beginning of your kick-ass next chapter.